Well, I asked, where's the beef? Let's call this for what this is. Oh my God! They are so hopelessly woke. How dare you? That is the intellectual capital of the left today. Give me a break. You are now watching the Daily Roundup. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Daily Roundup on this, a Monday, April 3rd, 2023. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a little bit about my co-host. Folks, do you know that today is National Film Score Day? And when my co-host wants to get inspired, she puts on her Batgirl costume and listens to the Hans Zimmer score from The Dark Knight Rises. Look out! She is the she-devil with a slingshot. She is the Khaleesi of the greater Coburg area. She is Tamara Ugolini. How you doing there, Tamara?
Such a missed opportunity. I could have wore my son's bat costume mask over my eyes today. Wouldn't have that been a fun way to kick off our daily roundup? I
bet you could rock that costume, Tamara. But yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, there is some great film scores out there. And I actually bought that soundtrack from The Dark Knight Rises because that is absolutely fantastic music, especially when it's put to a Batman theme. So anyways, I hope however you celebrate National Film Scar Day, I hope you have a great day at it. So,
I hope
Tamara,
you celebrate it with the windows down.
Packed agenda as always, and we have to have a hard end at 2:00. And I think this is when you step in and tell the folks out there what it is we are ostensibly trying to do here.
Yeah, lots of news to cover today on this manic Monday. So you are watching our daily roundup. And for all of our viewers at home, it's a chance for us to bring you some commentary live and have you also engage back with us. So we are currently streaming on a few different platforms: Rumble, Odyssey, Getter, Twitter, and the one that we love, we hate to love, love to hate, is YouTube. So you can chat with us directly, but no longer on YouTube, because we engage, apparently according to them, in wrong think and wrong speak. So we have been completely demonetized by YouTube and no longer gain any traction or revenue on that platform. So if you're joining us at home, I would urge you to go over to Rumble or Odyssey, and where you can engage with us using a super chat or a hyper chat. Because we want to get some of your feedback on some of the hot topics that we are going to delve into today. And the first of which is going to be the climate alarmism. And namely, here in Canada, how our cost on how we're supposed to offset carbon footprint and carbon output is just going up. So the taxpayers are really bearing the weight of the financial strain for government carbon related policies, thanks to the Justin Trudeau Liberals and their climate alarmism. So we have an actual minister dedicated. He's the environmental minister, but he's also now the minister of climate change. They're not questioning, like it's very clear, the science, they say that the climate is in fact changing and we need a minister dedicated to addressing this. And so we have the Honorable Steven Guilbeault. He has recently been, I guess, David, how do you put it, called out by some mainstream media journalists about how the carbon tax, which is not an April Fool's Day joke, it did just go up on April the 1st amid record inflation and an inability for Canadians to feed their families and heat their homes. We are facing a looming recession. But nonetheless, the Liberals went ahead with not only giving themselves a pay raise on April 1st, but also simultaneously hiking up the carbon tax. And we have a little video of him getting some pushback from a journalist on who the ones that are being harmed primarily by this tax hike really are.
Minister, respectfully, I'm looking at the PBO's report right now, and he goes through each quintile of the income brackets. In Alberta, each and every quintile will see a net loss. In Saskatchewan, all but the very lowest income, and the same in Manitoba. So I take your point that it is progressive, but in those instances, in those provinces, it's only those at the lowest part of the income scale that will see any net benefit. Everybody else, and certainly those in the second income bracket, are not exactly, the richest of Canadians. And once again, when your government said what this program was intended to accomplish, it made a promise to Canadians that they wouldn't be out of pocket for it. If a majority of Canadians are, and I'm not saying that the merits of the program, I'm not debating the merits of carbon pricing in this. I'm just trying to ask you if you understand why there are Canadians right now who are facing such tough financial times, who are saying, can you put a pause on this? Can you help us out? Because it isn't like the rebates are covering it all.
Well, we're doing a number of other things, Vashi, to help Canadians and to support Canadians through the transition to a lower carbon future, like a program to help people to get off home heating oil, which is much more expensive, much more polluting than using heat pumps, for example. So we're working with a number of jurisdictions across the country to do that. And as you said in the introduction about the Parliamentary Budget Officer, I mean, he acknowledges that he doesn't take into account the cost of the impacts of climate change. And let me give you just one example. Summer of 2021 in British Columbia, the overall economic impact of natural catastrophes that year alone, in British Columbia alone, $17 billion. This is a bill that all Canadians are paying, and that's 1 year, one jurisdiction in Canada.
I get all that, and I'm not negating it, but that isn't what you told Canadians carbon pricing would be. You didn't say it's going to cost you, but we'll do all this other stuff to help you. You said our rebates will cover you.
We have said that the rebates would help the people most in need in Canada, and that's exactly what the system is doing.
Wow. Well, first of all, Tamara, to get back to what you were saying earlier before we ran the clip, yeah, I do love that virtue signaling. Twas ever thus, it was the Ministry of the Environment. Now it's the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change. So even in a title, even in a bureaucratic department, the Liberals can't help but do some virtue signaling. And, it makes my heart bleed that, 120 million years ago, that there wasn't a Stegosaurus or a Triceratops named Minister of Climate Change. So they could have, helped the dinosaurs walk through that really big incident of climate change. But I digress. So I guess what I'm seeing here is that Minister Guilbeault has committed the greatest sin of all when you're part of Blackface's Liberal cabinet, which is he's told the truth. He is saying households will pay more. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tamara, but I thought those little checks we get in the mail every quarter or every half year, however the frequency is, I thought that was to more than cover the price at the pump, what we're paying in home heating oil, etc. But good golly, leave it to a convicted criminal, Guilbeault, to actually tell the truth. What do you make of this?
Yeah, that was under the guise of they were sweet talking this program, was that you would pay more now, but it was like an investment, right? So you would be reimbursed and then some, right? The green energy is all about an investment. It's going to be so lucrative and we're going to gain money and you just have to upfront billions of dollars and then we're going to somehow get it all back in this magical, mysterious world of the green economy. What I really liked and wanted to point out here that Guilbeault talks about is the idea of a heat pump and replacing your oil. I don't know if he's just mincing his words and he's not quite sure what a heat pump is, but maybe a heat pump would work in British Columbia or some of those southern states. But, here in the really tepid temperatures of Ontario, Alberta, the places, the north, a heat pump has a sweet spot of efficiency in and around -5, maybe -8, -10, up until about +5 and plus 10. After that, they are completely useless. So there is maybe 2 months out of the 12 months of the year that a heat pump could be efficiently utilized. And to say that that's a suitable replacement for something like oil, these people have no idea what they're actually talking about. And that just continues to go on and on and on for, it seems like, for forever. And now they're completely decimating Canadians at the banks and their ability to heat their homes and their ability to feed their families, and telling us to, well, just use your heat pump. Whereas, right now is maybe the sweet spot where the heat pump would be useful. And every other season throughout the year, it's completely useless.
Unbelievable. I mean, could you imagine our beloved colleague Sheila Gunn-Reid, who lives somewhere in the hinterland north of Edmonton, and even last month in March, there were days -30, -32, just recently -16. That's called a warming trend. So this heat pump you speak of, Tamara, wouldn't work under those climatic conditions. So I guess, well, maybe Mr. Guilbeault, he didn't finish the sentence. If you live in an area that gets temperatures colder than -8, please put on some extra sweaters. Hey, if you've got dogs, bring the dogs into the house and, get close to them. The name of the band, Three Dog Night, Tamara, that was all about surviving harsh climates. In the north, if it's a really cold night, you bring in a dog. If it's excruciatingly cold, you bring in a second dog. But the worst kind of cold is a 3-dog night. So buy some dogs and lie with them on those really cold nights if you're depending on a heat pump. Unbelievable. And I just want to know what other Liberals are saying, because Guilbeault has basically admitted that we are getting hosed in terms of compensation for these carbon taxes. So, and I do believe we do have another clip, Tamara, of blackface yet again. He's sticking to the script, promoting the lie that the carbon tax will raise the cost of living for Canadians, but put money back into your pockets does not compute. Let's hear blackface explain it to us all.
The parliamentary budget officers says most people will be paying thousands of dollars more in carbon tax than they will get in rebates. Why do you continue to claim that most people will come out ahead?
First of all, everybody knows that we have to fight climate change. But more than just fighting climate change, we have to prepare and invest in innovating for the future. And the best way to do that is to ensure that there is a price on pollution. And that's exactly what we did. We did it at the federal level, imposing it on the provinces that didn't have one. But here in Quebec, it's been a long time that you've always had a price on pollution, So the federal backstop and program doesn't apply in Quebec. So families in Quebec haven't seen any shift in the carbon price as of April 1st, as they did elsewhere across the country. But elsewhere across the country, where we bring in the price on pollution under the federal backstop, we also bring in a climate action incentive that right now more than compensates for the added costs of the carbon tax. And this is what Conservatives continue to mislead Canadians about. We're fighting climate change at the same time as the climate action incentive comes into people's bank accounts 4 times a year. Hundreds of dollars to help them as they make choices that are better for their family and better for the environment. Conservatives still think we don't have to do anything to fight climate change. Well, I've got droughts and wildfires and increased hurricanes that prove them wrong about that. Canadians right across the country know we have to fight climate change. We have to do it in a way that stays affordable for people, and that's exactly what we will continue to do.
Oh my goodness, Tamara, there's so much to, analyze there. First of all, once again, it's too bad to see the Prime Minister, blackface, confusing climate and weather again. I mean, drought, wildfires. Planet Earth has never experienced that in its multi-billion year history. But I want to go back to the first thing he said, Tamara, which was, everyone knows we have to fight climate change. Oh, really? Everyone? Like the regime in China, which of course blackface so admires in terms of getting things done. The last I saw, Tamara, they weren't fighting climate change, but they were adding hundreds of new coal generation plants every year. And remember, this is the dictatorship he so admires, and probably the number one polluter in terms of countries in the world. So right from the beginning till the end, this guy had all the ethics of a flim-flam man in trying to explain why we common Canadians are paying more on everything because of this useless carbon tax.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the question clearly says Canadians are going to spend thousands more. And then he responds with, well, you'll receive a few hundred, some hundreds into your bank account over the next year while you shell out thousands at the pumps, at the grocery store, to your utility companies. The cost is just insane. And what this government never seems to mention is how unsustainable lithium drilling or mining is. The oil, there's the ethical issue with child labor, slave labor, unregulated workplace issues in third world countries with mining lithium. And then, of course, you have your oil and gas sector, which is primarily hard-working, trained men who are paid well, who are professionals in their field, who are out there doing a difficult job that they signed up for. These aren't child slaves heading out to a mine in the middle of, a mud pit. So they're completely missing the bar on where these energy sources are coming from at their source. And none of this can be seen as sustainable in the long run. Solar panels, wind energy, your heat pump that Guilbeault thinks will somehow replace oil. They all run on electricity and they all have a lifespan, and their lifespan is usually around 20 to 25 years. So we put up all this upfront cost, and then by the time we get the return on that investment in approximately 20 years, the product is no longer any good. So at that point, what do we do?
No, and you know, Tamara, you raise a good point. These types are all about the EV, the electric vehicle revolution. The biggest virtue signaler of all would be the state of California. I think it's by 2030 or 2035. I can't remember. That's when they will ban the sale of fossil fuel vehicles in California. Funny thing is, Tamara,
we're not far off.
Oh, that's nothing. It'll be here before you know it. But right now, California has to deal with roving brownouts and blackouts, okay? They have one nuclear plant left. It has 2 reactors. Within the next 2 years, both those reactors are going offline. There are no plans to build new nuclear reactors in California. So imagine taking the inventory of fossil fuel cars in California right now, which is about 14.2 million vehicles, making them eventually all EVs, to a state that is already unable to cope with electricity demands. And you can export that model to other jurisdictions, including right here in Ontario, when you talk about a complete replacement. This is madness, Tamara. I think, you know, if that legislation goes through, if I was a Californian or in any region where there is a threat of brownouts and blackouts, I'm going into deep debt to buy some good old gas burning cars, because that Tesla that you just bought, or any of those other electrical vehicles, which are typically more than twice the price of the carbon version, well, you're going to see those turn into very expensive paperweights. But they don't tell you about that. It's full speed ahead. And one last point on that, Tamara. You'd think at least they would lead by example. When I see Blackface go visiting with his 8-vehicle motorcade, they are typically big 8-cylinder Chevy Suburbans and Ford Expeditions. No EV vehicles there, no plug-in hybrids, no even basic hybrids, all fossil fuel burning vehicles, which they let idle, by the way, while Blackface is doing his speech indoors. You know, again, Tamara, we see do as I say, not as I do, don't we?
That's right. And I heard on the radio on Saturday, and I was just trying to quickly pull up an article. I can't seem to get one up here, but I think it's General Motors is pivoting to exclusively manufacture electric vehicles by the year 2028. This is 5 years from now. And I think, we will have a difficult time purchasing vehicles that run on traditional fossil fuels at this point. And I, for one, do not want an electric vehicle that, can just spontaneously combust, needs to stop every so often at charging stations for half an hour, 45 minutes plus, has this inefficient battery that will die in the middle of our harsh, cold weather, winter conditions. This is absolute absurdity. And I'm going, shoot, we better try to invest in some sort of better fossil fuel burning vehicle by 2027, so that we can hopefully have the longevity of a fossil burner while our government attempts to pivot to these electric vehicles for the next however many years they push it before they realize that it's going to be a failed endeavor and a failed investment. This is absolutely insane. I don't know how, these companies must be being incentivized by the billions, by the government and other stakeholders to push this, because it does not make any sort of economic or efficient sense to do so.
Oh, but Tamara, well, first of all, 2028, that's a new date for me. I thought their original statement was 2030, but maybe they're so gung-ho.
They're pushing it.
That's incredible. No, when it comes to General Motors, Tamara, we need only look back on recent history. This is a company that has been bailed out by the taxpayer, not once, but twice. So General Motors can roll the dice, and that's what this is. If you're talking about only offering electric cars in just 5 years' time, that is a humongous roll of the dice. And if General Motors fails, guess what, Tamara? You and I and all of the members of our audience, both north and south of the border, we're going to bail them out a third time because GM is too big to fail. Remember that? So they're like the high wire artists operating with a safety net below. When you do that, you can take more risks because if you fall off the high wire, you're going to be safe. If there's no net there, you're going to die. And GM has been mollycoddled by governments for decades. So that's why they can do something outrageous like that. And I got to tell you, Tamara, Lincoln Jay and I back in December, as you may know, we went out to the plant, the Cami plant in southern Ontario, where GM is making a huge investment for electrical, basically work trucks. We were invited by GM to come there, which was great. But once Blackface got a look at who was on the list for media, we were told to leave the property or be charged with trespassing. Unbelievable. I think Mr. Producer Efren has got the video proof there. That's the security guard telling us to, he went from welcome to the Cami plant to you better beat it or else we're calling the cops. Unbelievable. But it's too bad because what I just said in the last couple of minutes, those were part of my hard questions that no one in the media that did get in that day would dare ask. And also, you got to wonder, last month there was that announcement, Tamara, of a Volkswagen plant being set up in southern Ontario. I think it's 7.1, 7.3 billion, lots of jobs. I'm happy about that. But when the question came to how much did the federal government and the province of Ontario put into that plant, what were we told? Oh, that's confidential information. That's competitive information. Hey, listen, if the federal government and the province of Ontario government were private corporations, I get that. It's none of our business. But we are the shareholders. We are the stakeholders. I just wonder how much of that $7+ billion for the Volkswagen electric battery manufacturing plant is coming right out of taxpayer dollars. Tamara, mm-hmm. do you want to harbor a guess?
Well, I want to actually issue a clarification because that's what I was talking about. That's what I was referring to, not General Motors, but this new plant that is being opened by Volkswagen to solely manufacture their Golf, which will be solely electric battery powered. And so, sorry, I was a little bit misinformed there at the beginning, but that is what I was referring to by 2028, that they will not be manufacturing the Volkswagen Golf as a fossil fuel guzzler from that point forward. And yeah, it's clear, like I said, that the government, their subsidies and the stakeholders involved here, that they're pushing the funding on these initiatives without fully thinking through how this is going to function on the ground. We don't have the infrastructure for the charging stations. Sheila has done numerous reports, order paper questions, access to information requests on this. We see that, especially in the northern countries where batteries of this caliber are not going to be able to withstand those harsh, cold temperatures. There just isn't the infrastructure there to withstand any of this. We know that there are safety concerns with electric vehicles. Fossil fuels seem to be working really well thus far. And as long as our government stops taxing the bejesus out of us on them, they're pretty cost effective. And if we can, filter out this bureaucracy that's generating so many funds on top of the cost of the fuel, then that brings it down even more. And you have, leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, really pointing out once again the hypocrisy of the bureaucracy with this April Fool's Day joke, which actually is just a joke on struggling Canadians who can't afford, as I've mentioned, to heat their homes or feed their families they're going to be paying more at the pumps, which is just going to further translate into increased costs at the grocery store for the transportation of all of your goods and services. Everything is going to continue to inflate because of this tax. We have world hunger. We have so many global issues that could be easily remedied by these billions of dollars. And yet our government tells us that we need to get taxed more to to fight climate change. I'd like to know how tax helps the earth. And at the end of the day, right? It boils down to that.
100%. And I just want to also state here, Tamara, if there was a business case for these electrical vehicles, then why does government have to come in with these huge subsidies? And the answer is the business case for the vast majority of Canadians who are not stinking rich, these are too expensive. You're looking at six-figure vehicles. You know what I liken it to, Tamara? Back in, I remember, around 1977, you saw the first push for VCRs on the market, back when there was Betamax and VHS and that war. And in 70s dollars, I remember you had to pay in the neighborhood of $1,600 for a VCR. Can you imagine that? So if you want to be a trailblazer, you are going to pay a huge price. We are in the infancy of EV vehicles. I'll give you a perfect example. The Ford F-150 Lightning, which is an all-electric Ford F-150 pickup truck. I remember seeing this reported in Car and Driver. So these are U.S. numbers. 69,000 US is the truck, but get a load of this, and I've never seen this ratio before in my life. The dealer markup, $73,000 more than the actual truck itself. So in other words, Tamara, you could buy two top-of-the-line fuel-burning F-150s for the price of one Ford 150 Lightning EV. That's not smart. Who would invest? And also, in the early goings of electrification, you want a track record for that vehicle of at least a few model years so they can iron out all the bugs. So, you know, it's not a good gamble by the manufacturers, and God forbid consumers going into debt to buy one of these EVs. Not a good move.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say the reliability of fossil fuel manufactured vehicle is going to be far superior than anything you're going to get with these electric vehicles. But I think that we should take a quick ad break because we're going to come back with some Trans Visibility Day madness. So you don't want to miss our next topic because we're launching a new campaign. So stick around after this ad break.
Oh, hey guys, thanks for watching the live
off.
stream, and sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to pop on to tell you about this incredible sweatshirt that I'm wearing, but also all the other great merchandise that we have available at rebelnewsstore.com. We're adding new stuff all the time, so be sure to keep checking. Even if you shop today, there might be something new tomorrow. And if you are shopping, be sure to use the coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off at checkout. Again, it's rebelnewsstore.com, coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off at checkout.
If you want to look good and shine like me, you can do so at our store. Go to rebelnewsstore.com. On this website, you have so much different style to wear, as this one, my favorite one, Justin Castro. With my code Alexa10, you will have 10% off on your next purchase. So don't hesitate, go now and look so good like me.
Have you checked out the fresh new swag we have at rebelnewsstore.com, like this nifty Resistance trucker sweater? We have warm, cozy sweaters, t-shirts, mugs, hats, phone cases, you name it. Everything to fit your freedom-loving needs, or maybe even trigger a liberal family member or friend. And for a limited time, you can use code TAMARA10 at checkout to save 10% off of your total order. So head on over to rebelnewsstore.com, check out all of our new designs, make some purchases, and use code TAMARA, that's TAMARA 10 at checkout for 10% off your order. Head on over, check it out.
Oh, Tamara, you look resplendent in that ad. Am I allowed to say that,
And
or
this-
am I going to get written up by HR? Do we have an HR person? Obviously
Also,
not.
I'm not easily triggered. I'm not easily triggered, David. Thank you very much. But you should head over because we have new designs, and you can see I'm sporting one of our Rebel sweaters here. They're nice and comfy, and use code Tamara10 as always, the best one. Now we have an absolutely crazy story coming out of Vancouver from this past weekend. I guess it was Trans Visibility Day because, you know, there's a lack of visibility there apparently. But an activist who really is trying to uphold the fact that children and adolescents cannot consent to some of this very aggressive treatment in terms of medical transitioning. And, you know, we've seen this, the indoctrination happening at the school level and arguably all throughout our society. But Billboard Chris has been a really big name in denouncing gender ideology, and specifically as it targets youth, minors, and younger children.
Yep.
And just this past weekend at a protest, he was assaulted by, you know, that crowd that says love is louder, I think is their mantra, and inclusivity and tolerance
and love trumps hate, right? Isn't that
yeah,
one of
well,
their
love
chestnuts?
is louder. I think it's love is louder than hate. And so we're going to show you some clips first and foremost so that you can see for yourself what happened here in Vancouver over the weekend. And then we're going to tell you what Rebel is going to be doing about it. So first, I think we have the first clip where Billboard Chris has been assaulted and the police have been called in, you know, to keep the peace, I think is what their duties are supposed to be in a situation like this, and potentially make arrests while they investigate a situation where an assault has taken place. And this was kind of the response that the Vancouver Police Department met Chris with.
Listen, I love the police. My brother's a police officer. I respect law and order. I respect our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And I'm not trying to be a jerk to you earlier today. I don't think a lot of you understand what I'm actually representing and the seriousness of this situation. But it is what it is, I guess. This is Canada, and people shouldn't be allowed to assault people without consequence,
I agree,
you know?
Chris, but the thing is, right, when we get into people's faces and they get into our faces, it doesn't really matter who does the first push. It's considered a consensual fight, and maybe that's something you should.
I didn't get into people's faces. I was
Chris,
here
I
for.
saw you
You
get
weren't.
very close to people.
You weren't here.
And
You weren't even here.
I was.
I came and walked. I came over to your car.
Yes, that first time.
After.
But the second time.
The second time, what?
When you were pushed on the ground.
Are you kidding me? I'd been walking away from them.
Yeah, and they surrounded
to do an interview with him. They came close. I walked away again to do the interview with him.
All I'm saying is at this point, maybe
They
you
surrounded-
should ask your brother what a consensual fight
No!
is, right?
Oh my gosh. This is unbelievable. I walked away from them 3 times. They were surrounding me. You all were doing nothing. A man yelled in my ear from inches away, and I tried to get out of this situation where they're surrounding me while you guys do nothing, and I immediately get punched in the face. And you're blaming me?
And whoever punched you should be charged.
Are you kidding me right now? This is totally surreal. I cannot believe what I'm hearing. Amazing. Amazing. Totally amazing. Do you even know what like, why are you behaving like this? Do you think I'm evil or something for having this position? Like, what's your problem?
Yeah, you are female. And this should be an issue for you.
This has nothing to do with you, okay?
What happened? Right. I'm a female. It has nothing to do with me, this trans thing. No. Nothing to do with women.
I'm talking to somebody else about something, okay?
It doesn't. These conversations are pointless right now. You're trying to insinuate that was a mutual thing. Like, my gosh, mutual thing. I'd walked away from the crowd 3 times. They kept following me. Then they surrounded me from all sides. started yelling in my ear from inches away while you all did nothing. And then when I can't even get out of that surrounding and I get punched in the face, I get pulled, you're telling me that's a mutual engagement?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
Well, you have the
Incredible.
Right, you have the right not to be here either.
It's incredible.
Right? So,
and I have the right to be here.
yes, you do.
Have you read this thing called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms?
Yes, I have.
Have you?
Yes, I have.
You should go home and read it again.
On whose orders are you guys acting on?
Excuse me?
On whose orders are you guys acting?
Oh my God. Tamara, imagine, God forbid, you were ever being assaulted out west and that police officer comes to the scene of the crime. She, as Billboard Chris said, 3 times he walked away. And they followed him. They surrounded him. We've got some more footage coming up, folks, and you'll see just how bad it was. And he got slugged with a haymaker. And Officer, what is her name? Buckman, I believe. Is that correct?
Bachman, yeah.
Bachman.
I think
Officer
it's
Bachman.
Frederic.
Yeah, who cannot suppress that Chrystia Freeland Cheshire Cat grin. I don't know what she finds so amusing about it. She called it, correct me if I'm wrong, a consensual fight? That was a mugging.
Well, why don't we show the actual assault here?
Absolutely.
Because that was kind of the aftermath. So
Yeah.
let's show you. And I think this was actually the second assault. So this is after the police have already arrived and they're supposed to probably prevent further assaults from happening. But nonetheless, this is what happened. Oh, and I'm hearing that this may be actually the first assault because and it's so hard to keep track of because there were so many assaults and it's only the citizen journalists who are documenting this and it's happening in real time. And so we do have a space where you're going to be able to learn more and find the facts and the series of events and how this unfolded. But I think this is in fact the first assault.
Why do you think they're getting that kind of representation? I mean, it's clearly was aggressive, violent assault.
You suck. You suck. Fuck
No, this
you.
is the second assault.
Fuck you. You're not wanted. Fuck you. You're
This is
a
the
fucking
second one.
idiot. You're a fucking
I don't know what to say.
Fuck
I guess
you.
these police officers
Fuck
are mostly
you,
indoctrinated as well.
Everyone here,
They're afraid of the mob.
because you're a
I
fucking
think
idiot.
I think they're afraid that if they do anything to actually keep law and order, that they'll end up being on the end of this verbal abuse. So it's just cowardice from everybody all around.
People probably want to know, how do you keep your composure?
What's up?
How do you keep your composure?
Fuck you. 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 Hey, get your fucking head up there.
So
Yeah.
so this is the second assault because the police are already there. So they were called after the first assault, and that's when the interaction started with this officer, Frederic Bachman, and I hope I'm pronouncing both the first and last name correctly. But we actually have, I shared in the producers chat here, there's some zoomed in footage that I wonder if we could just pull up of her face as this second assault is taking place.
You mean
that
his
someone
face?
No, the officer's face.
Oh,
I think
I
she is
see.
in fact
Okay,
a female. There, so you see her in the background there. So she's been circled, and then there's another photo that you can see that she's like looking on with gleeful bliss almost. It's really, really strange that the officers just, they just stood idly by. They were looking on.
Unbelievable.
And they fail to act until the situation escalates. So their job, in my opinion, is to prevent something like that from happening. So when you see someone who's just standing there, and Billboard Chris, he has these signs, and I think the front said like children can't consent, and on the back he's wearing a dad with the noun and the dictionary, a definition of what a dad is, or a man maybe. I'm not clear on what ones he was wearing that day, but those are kind of his usual MO. And so as soon as you see someone like that being swarmed by an angry, aggressive mob, as police, your job is to intervene and to keep that peace and to prevent that situation from escalating. And that group, I don't know how many officers were there, 10, 15 of them, stood idly by until violence occurred. And then they kind of get in there, except for that one officer who's sort of the main, I would say villain, but they say victim in this entire unfolding. She just stood there and smirked and smiled, and then stood back and let the rest of the police officers go in and handle the situation. This seems more to me like some sort of diversity hire than anyone who's actually competent and fit in their duty and role.
I think you're right, Tamara. So the question arises, given that a crime was committed on camera, no less, several cameras for that matter, and charges were not pressed, was that the law enforcement officer, was that her buying into the trans side of the argument and therefore she's biased? Or is it their higher ups? Is it the chief? Is it the politicians above the police that are pulling the strings that, hey, when it's a transgender protest, go easy on the trans people. They're such lovable, cuddly creatures, and we don't want to give them any aggro. I'll tell you, Tamara, it clearly shows, that video, it was not a consensual fight. He got ambushed by that thing. And it also shows, if you are continually dropping F-bombs, if you are resorting to violence in a debate, well, you know what? You really don't have much of a position, do you? Because if that's what your counter argument boils down to, you've lost. You've automatically lost. Once you start, swearing repeatedly and being violent, forget it. And I got to tell you too, Tamara, this just shows you how wrong we were when we go back 50 or 60 years ago when we started shutting down the mental institutions in our country. The idea was, there's all kinds of new pharmaceuticals. If these people just take their pills, they'll be okay. Well, 50 or 60 years ago, that blonde-haired thing would have been in a mental asylum. You know it, I know that, the cops know it. But having said all that, there is no excuse for this dereliction of duty. That was disgraceful.
Well, and that's exactly why we've just launched an immediate petition campaign at fireofficerbachmann.com. So it's the actual spelling I think is BUCHMANN. So fireofficerbachmann.com. And have the police really investigate this situation, because the way that this officer conducted themselves, the way that all of those officers conducted themselves, they're now putting out, their Twitter feed is blown up ever since this incident. They're now saying that they are investigating and looking for these individuals. They had them right there. They had the people involved. The assaults all took place in front of the police officers' eyes. They had them there. They didn't place any arrests. And they say now that they're investigating because of the citizen journalists on social media and the amount of backlash that they have received for not taking any action in the moment while this was all unfolding before their eyes. So you can head over to fireofficerbachmann.com, and at that special website as well, our reporter Drea Humphrey is investigating further. Both she'll be interviewing Billboard Chris, but she's also found the mother who was a complainant, I believe. And again, the details will come out as Drea continues her wonderful investigative reporting on the subject. But this officer has been the recipient of previous misconduct allegations. So this isn't a new thing for this officer to act act in a way that is not professional or becoming of a police officer. She has other misconduct against her, and Drea is going to be researching that further. And so you can find all of those reports as we investigate and launch them at fireofficerbachmann.com. And the other thing I want to note here too is that these two activists that were in the face of Billboard Chris yelling obscenities at him in his, inches from his face, and are, you know, oh, we're inclusive and loving, and love is louder than hate, and we must denounce hate and intolerance. These are men identifying as women.
Yep.
So I think, I don't know, I can't recall where the publication came from, but there was a mainstream media article about this, and they said, you know, conservative activist gets into an altercation with, you know, a woman's rights advocate, like alluding to the fact that he hit a woman.
They called that the transgender person a woman's rights activist. That's not a woman's rights activist. That's a misogynist.
Right. Yeah. And so he wants this article, and I'm trying to find it here, looking through his Twitter page. But anyway, maybe.
While you look, Tamara, I think this is yet again another example about so-called trans rights.
The New York Post.
It's not about equality. It's about having special rights. And I think the message the police are sending here is, if you want to get violent, if you want to get handsy, just wrap yourself in the rainbow flag or the trans flag or the Pride Progress flag. That's the one with that rectangle, I think they call it the BIPOC vagina. Just put those flags around your body, and you've got free lease to carry out mayhem. And I'll tell you something, Tamara, this is not new to me. I'm not gonna go take a deep dive on this, but back in September 2019, I had my own encounter out in the Vancouver area for a notorious transgender grifter, and it was caught on camera that he struck me with a metal cane on my head and shoulders 5 times. And when the RCMP came, it boiled down to this. They were doing everything they could not to press charges. And I said, listen, this is garden variety assault. I let them see the video. And the conversation I had with one of the officers, Tamara, was, well, if we charge him, we have to charge you. I go, charge me for what? Well, mischief. Mischief? I'm just practicing journalism in a public place. What are you talking about? Mischief. So that's the way it was. It was almost like I felt like I was a contestant on Let's Make a Deal. They had no desire whatsoever to charge this person because in terms of political correctness, in terms of wokeness, you know, the gender politics didn't add up, Tamara. You know, the bad guy was like I said, the trans grifter, not vice versa. I can tell you this much, I bet you, as a male white heterosexual, if the roles were reversed, if I was the one smashing the transgender grifter over the head with a steel object, oh, what do you want to bet? I might still be in jail right now. What a disgrace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where the New York Post, they may have corrected the article since this time, but there was a tweet that Billboard Chris put out saying that in the article they were saying that he pushed a woman away at her throat. And he clarifies and he says, I placed a hand on his chest as he continued to crowd my space, making it impossible for me to move, screaming inches from my ear. So yeah, you see, this is not very ladylike, everyone. These are men identifying as women who are acting as men, right? He's getting aggressive and he's getting handsy with another man. This isn't ladylike behavior.
Tamara, I've got to reel you in a little here. I think you just twice committed a hate crime. You said ladylike behavior in this day and age of the slut walk. Oh, you don't call these people ladies. They lose their marbles. That has something to do with hierarchy or civility or something else they hate. But look at that creature. I mean, come on.
Well, what concerns me is the pointy ends of these little flags, right? Like, why the police aren't intervening here when these people have sharp objects who are clearly suffering from some mental illness and serious aggression. This could have gone a lot worse than it did. Like, I mean, it's bad enough as it is, but it could have been a lot worse. And the Vancouver PD, as a result of what's happened here, are now claiming the victim. They say that the criticisms that this officer has faced on Twitter is just unacceptable, and they're completely spinning right? There's a complete reversal here of the natural order, as per usual, where they're claiming to have been the victims in this situation,
Always.
not the people who were actually assaulted.
Tamara, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but basically one of their shticks, for lack of a better word, they surround you, they wrap you in their flags, you're just trying to move, and
Yes.
if your foot even touches their foot, they scream, they fall down, they call for law enforcement, I've been assaulted. It is unbelievable. And by the way, because I did see an anti-fascist flag there, you see increasingly people with the Antifa movement, which is really all about fascism with their tactics and methods, they are now wrapping themselves in the rainbow flag. So, yes, there you go. You see that picture, anti-fascist. So it's almost like,
the middle finger.
Oh, yeah, always. And again, that's how you want to have a debate. You know, if you're doing the middle finger, profanity, throwing haymakers, you've already lost. But what I was about to say is that Antifa is increasingly wrapping themselves in these rainbow flags and sort of, getting a get out of jail free card by doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, what do our viewers think? Anyone who's tuning in on the live stream, do you have any opinions on this? Any thoughts? Do you agree that this officer should be, investigated and potentially fired? Are they right to be claiming the victim here? What should have happened in the moment? Should they have taken action as police are hired by the public, right? Let's not forget that these are taxpayer funded employees of ours, meant to ensure our public safety and keep our peace. Should they have intervened sooner? Should there have been some arrests made in the field? Let us know in the comments below. I think we'll go to a quick ad break before we come back to hopefully some chats. And then if not, we will touch quickly on the Toronto mayoral race and how they are moving to decriminalize illicit drugs for children.
Shameful for children.
My mug? I know, it's pretty cool. So is this hoodie I got on, and you could have it on too if you check out our special website at rebelnewsstore.com. That's where you can see Freedom Focus hoodies that we have for you, beanies, cell phone cases, you name it, all while supporting our journalism, where we fight to bring you the other side of the story, as opposed to, being forced by the Trudeau government to fund leftist media out of your taxes. The truth is, without you and your generosity, there is no Rebel News. So again, if you like the reports that we bring you and that we also fight for freedoms in Canada, please consider doing some shopping, picking up some swag at rebelnewsstore.com. We appreciate your support.
So Tamara, please tell me my eyes are playing tricks on me, or that this is a April Fool's Day joke 2 days past its best before date. But Toronto demanding decriminalization of fentanyl and meth for kids?
Oh my gosh. I wish it were an April Fool's Day joke. Actually, this first came out on March 31st. So it's a couple of days old. That was on Friday. So yeah, the city of Toronto, the first sentence reads here, has released its sweeping plan to decriminalize all hard drugs, including fentanyl and crack cocaine for any age. And the sweeping plan, you can check it out for yourself there with the hyperlink. Toronto's request is even more lenient than the decriminalization order granted to the entire province of British Columbia by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau earlier this year. The city is asking that the federal government grant a Health Canada exemption for all drugs, extending even to children.
Unbelievable.
In British Columbia's case, they granted the exemption only applied to adults, but Toronto wants it to include all people, including youth, because criminalization does not effectively deter youth substance use. The data show that youth in Toronto between the ages of 12 and 17 use unregulated, i.e. illegal, drugs, and are vulnerable to the same harms associated with criminalization as adults. This exemption does not apply to childcare facilities, airports, or schools, right? Because those places need to be safe and we need to not promote the use of illicit drugs in those facilities. But nonetheless, this is just more woke, bogus policy trying to be pushed forward by the City of Toronto, I guess because they don't really have a mayor. And so the official candidacy, I think it is, kicks off today there, David?
Yeah, no, there's the first day to register for mayor. And I think you're right. When the cat's away, the rats will play. And, you know, Tamara, it is unbelievable. I mean, like, why just fentanyl and meth? If you're a drunk driver, you've lost your license, maybe had a serious accident, maybe you killed somebody, so you don't have access to your car anymore. Why don't we reach out to that alcoholic staying at home and bring him bourbon and scotch so he doesn't get a case of withdrawal? You know, Tamara, a week ago Friday, I was attending, it was a business association dinner out in Scarborough. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith was being given an award. And I won't go too deep into the details, but in her acceptance speech, she talked about how Alberta is serving as a model for the rest of Canada and indeed, dare I say, the world in terms of dealing with those addicted to these hard drugs. And essentially, you know, the police go over and they say, listen, you have a choice. You can go into rehabilitation or you can go to jail. So they almost always choose rehabilitation. When they're there, they're put into facilities that look like college dormitories. And they live in a communal basis. They're taught, once again, because you have to introduce, for some of these people, they've been so rehabilitated for so long, they can't function alone. So you teach them how to cook, how to shop, and half the day is spent, you know, doing chores. The other half of the day is spent, you know, taking seminars, taking those programs that are designed to get you off these horrible drugs that, when used as directed, are going to end your life. That's how we should be taking care of this issue, not facilitating more consumption, because otherwise, you know, it's really a tale of two cities. You can have the Alberta model, or you can go to Vancouver, and you can go to certain parts of the downtown area that look like the set for The Walking Dead. They are dangerous places. I side with the Alberta model.
Yep. I side with the fact that this is further enabling an issue. And we can see that through harm reduction policies, that there isn't very much harm that's actually being reduced. We have more overdoses, more use of illicit drugs than ever before in the places where these progressive policies have been welcomed and taken up by government officials. And again, it's taxpayers footing the bill to give drugs to addicts instead of getting them the help and the mental health supports that they need, right? It's not just drug addiction. I will fully acknowledge that there is a whole litany of mental health issues, usually stemming from childhood trauma, that takes place and is the precursor to addiction. And we need to be addressing and facilitating mental health supports and support for that child, dealing with and addressing that childhood trauma that stems as and turns into the need and the feelings of utilizing drugs and addiction. If we spent the billions of dollars that we're giving to big pharma to fund use of illicit drugs and giving them to children on the streets, if we switched and we put that money over into mental health supports that were actually providing tangible resources to individuals who need that sort of care, then I think you're going to be looking at a much cleaner, more functioning societal fabric outcome at the end of the day than just enabling drug addiction and letting people spiral out of control with their addictions under the guise of being progressive and humane, right? This is sold to the public as those things. Meanwhile, you're ignoring the root of the issue and you're just enabling an addict to destroy their lives and everyone around them.
No, you're 100% right, Tamara. And when we add the age equation to this, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this child abuse? I mean, you know, if a mom and pop convenience store sells a pack of cigarettes to somebody who's just even a few months under the age of majority, they're going to get heavily fined, eventually lose their liquor license. You know, you can go to a Liquor Control Board of Ontario store, and if you have somebody who's a minor even holding a bottle for you to bring to the cash register, that's not allowed, right? So there's all this, regulation out there in terms of, protecting minors from things like liquor, tobacco. But when it comes to these hardcore fentanyl, are you kidding me? I mean,
right.
Tamara, like I said, in my book, that is child abuse by the state.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you bring up a good point there on the tobacco. I remember as a kid, my mom sending me to the corner store. I'd go pick up here's $5 at the time, right? That's how much they were, maybe even less. Go pick me up a pack of cigarettes. And she had to send me with a note, and sometimes they had to call. And that was, in very early on in the, would have been the early 90s. And the convenience store used to give me a pack of cigarettes, but fast track 5-10 years afterward, you couldn't go into a convenience store and purchase a pack of smokes if you didn't have ID to show on you for the life of you. And now we're just going to be giving those minors fentanyl. I mean, wow, we've really come full circle, haven't we?
Oh, Tamara, it's worse than you say, because the government, I know Ontario does this, I'm sure the other provinces do, they stage sting operations. So they get somebody who looks like they're older than 18, but in reality they're 16 or 17. And basically, if the shop owner doesn't ask for government photo ID, they're fined. And I think it's 3 strikes and you're out. Eventually you lose your tobacco license, which for a variety store, that's an economic death sentence. So yeah, and by the way, you are right. I remember, back in the late 60s, early 70s for my grandparents, we lived on Lawrence Avenue, and I'd go to the variety store with a $2 bill. Remember those? Once upon a time, kids, there was no such thing as a toonie. There was this pink $2 bill and a handwritten note. Please give David a pack of Cravenet King Size. I even remember the brand, right? Oh my God. If you were to do that today, like I said, you risk losing your license. But apparently meth, fentanyl for children, because the government is the drug dealer, that's okay. This is despicable.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I wanted to go back to this True North article quickly, because at the very last sentence, it says, at the same time, Toronto has moved to introduce a pilot program to allow drinking in public parks. So get this, David, we have alcohol, we have fentanyl, and we have meth, and we have minors. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, if it's someone in a park having a picnic and they're responsible, I mean, you see this in Europe all over the place. There really isn't a problem. But as you know, Tamara, many of Toronto's parks, and with the warmer weather coming, you'll see, as sure as mosquitoes and flies become part of the fabric, you're going to see these tent cities pop up. And I can see liquor binging going on there. And you're right, a mentally ill person who has access to big dangerous dogs. What could possibly go wrong, especially after they're drugged up or liquored up? Unbelievable.
It truly is. In this pilot program, I guess we'll wait and see how it turns out. And depending on who the new mayor of Toronto will be, I assume will be a big part of whether or not these projects go forward.
Tamara, it is fascinating who the mayor is going to be. The field gets more crowded with every passing day. And, when you look at all the vote splitting that might happen, conceivably, somebody might become mayor with a single-digit percentage. In other words, 9% of the vote, and you're carried in. I mean, not really a mandate to boast about, is it?
No, definitely not. But there's a couple contenders, and have you been following it? You've probably been following it closer than I have. I know that Ben Bankus, the comedian, is running. Chris Sky, the freedom fighter, he's running. And then there was a latest one, a former police chief.
Mark Saunders.
What is his name?
Mark
yes,
Saunders?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Oh, go ahead.
If someone like him were to be elected, I would assume that pilot projects such as this would not move forward.
Yeah. I want a tough on crime mayor for sure. And I do love Ben Bankus for proving my theory correct. Whenever he's making a video statement, he's waving the trans flag. It's kind of like, standing behind Superman's cape of invulnerability, that no matter, and he's not even talking about trans issues. He's just waving it as though it's a magic wand to protect them from any criticism. Because if you take issue with any of Ben Bankus's platforms, well, you are obviously a transphobe, and there can be nothing worse.
That's right. If you haven't seen some of his comedic relief, I highly recommend, because it's pretty funny. But nonetheless, we are at 2:07 now, so we are going to say goodbye to our viewers at home. Mm-hmm. But I think it will be myself and David, or maybe even Ezra, back same time and place tomorrow.
Yes.
So
it is
be sure
you,
to stay tuned.
Tamara Ugolini, and the big boss man himself, Ezra Levant. Lincoln and I will be, how shall I put this, on assignment. And we really are.
Mission
We're not
specialist.
goofing off, right? So we'll be somewhere in the greater Toronto area doing some form of journalism, and if it pays off, it's going to be a whopper of a story. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So thanks again to super producers Efren and Olivia. Thank you, Tamara, for your time. Thank you for all the viewers that watched us. And as we said, come here at 1 o'clock Eastern tomorrow, Tuesday, and you'll get more of Tamara Ugolini and the always brilliant Ezra Levant. As always, stay safe and stay sane.
Less than a week after the Safe Third Country Agreement was amended, 8 people died attempting to cross the border by boat. Are you concerned that the changes you've made to the Safe Third Country Agreement are going to encourage riskier crossings?
Of course, the tragedy is immeasurable. We think of the families and the extraordinarily difficult moments that were the last for these families, including young kids. We can't even imagine what they're going through. We need to be there to support families and folks like them. But I want us to be very, very careful about jumping to conclusions. This was a horrific story, and there is a proper investigation going on. We need to understand